The silence in that house was no longer just an absence of sound. It was memory, regret, and everything left unsaid. On the table, a closed folder. Inside it, the official end of yet another story. But what if, this time, it wasn't just about signing and moving on? What if it were possible to relearn love? The mistakes of the past don't always need to be sentences. Sometimes they are the push we need to start over, and new beginnings can be more powerful than happy endings. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. The house was enveloped in silence, the kind that doesn't ask for permission to enter. The living room, still bearing the mark of the last argument, remained tidy, yet filled with absences. On the table there was a brown folder. The lawyer had left the papers that morning. There were no instructions, only the request for him to read them calmly, and when he was ready, to sign. Eli sat in the armchair with a heavy body. At 42 years old, he never imagined he would be in this situation for the second time. The folder was there, innocuous in appearance but devastating in its content. He opened it but did not read. His gaze wandered around the room, absorbing the details he had built with Ava during their 5-year marriage, the bookshelf they assembled together, the photographs from their trip to the coast on their 2nd anniversary, the small ceramic vase she had brought from a craft fair. Every object told a story. Every corner of the house held a fragment of what they had been. And now everything was turning into pieces of a museum of memories that would soon be dismantled. He got up with a sigh and went to the bedroom. He opened the drawer where he kept important documents and, in a corner, found the black box. Inside it, his current wedding ring. He hadn't worn it in weeks, since the night Ava declared she could no longer live in that version of the marriage. "It's not a marriage, Eli," she had said with tear-filled eyes. "It's coexistence. We are two strangers sharing a mortgage." Next to the little box, almost forgotten, lay another ring, thinner, worn out, from his first marriage. He thought he had gotten rid of it. He picked it up carefully, like someone rescuing a fragment from another life. Inside, the name Charlotte engraved in delicate letters, his first wife, his first failure. For a second, he felt a knot in his chest. 2 rings, 2 names, 2 stories with the same ending. Charlotte had been his college girlfriend. They married young, full of dreams and plans. In the beginning, everything seemed perfect. Movie nights at home, plans to travel the world, conversations that lasted until dawn. But gradually, Eli began to withdraw, immersing himself in work, abandoning their shared dreams. When Charlotte started to complain about his absence, he didn't understand. When she asked for more attention, he responded with irritation. And when she finally asked for a divorce, Eli was surprised, as if he hadn't seen the signs for years. He had promised himself, after his first divorce, that he would learn from his mistakes, that he would be different, that he would be present, that he would cherish the little moments. But there he was, years later, facing the same abyss. He could no longer blame the routine, the work, or the missed connections. The problem, he realized with painful clarity, was within him. The coldness he cultivated without noticing, the neglect of the details that mattered, the way he left things undone, hoping that love would be strong enough to withstand his emotional absence. "Love isn't a cactus, Eli," Ava had said in one of the last arguments. "It doesn't survive without daily care. I miss you." The tears came. Not as an outburst, but as a surrender. He allowed himself to cry. For Charlotte, who tried for so long before giving up. For Ava, who believed it would be different. For himself, for continuing to repeat the same destructive patterns. Sitting on the edge of the bed with both rings in the palm of his hand, Eli felt the weight of his failures. It wasn't just a marriage that was ending. It was the repetition of a cycle that seemed inescapable. Ava still lived with him. Although she had already found an apartment, she needed a few weeks to arrange the move. They shared the rooms like cordial strangers, establishing silent schedules to avoid meeting in the kitchen or bathroom. There were no more fights, but there were also no gestures. The silence was now polite, lethal. That night, after putting away the rings, Eli couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, replaying moments from the wedding in his mind. He remembered Ava's excitement when they bought the house, how she planned every detail of the decor, how she cooked while humming on Sunday mornings. He also remembered how he gradually stopped noticing those things, stopped saying thank you, stopped participating. The next morning he woke up before the alarm clock. It was Saturday, and normally he would sleep in. But something had changed. He got up, took a long shower, and went down to the kitchen. Ava was still asleep. He made coffee before she woke up. Not the strong, bitter coffee he preferred, but the kind she liked. Lighter, without sugar. He left it on the table next to the blue mug she always used, the one with small stars drawn on the side. He added some toast and strawberry jam, her favourite weekend breakfast. When Ava came down, wearing a faded grey robe and with her hair tied in a messy bun, she paused for a moment when she saw the table. She looked at the coffee, the mug, the toast, then at Eli, who was pretending to read the newspaper on the couch. She noticed the gesture but said nothing. She just sat down and ate in silence. The other day, Eli washed all the dishes from the night before, not just his own but the ones Ava had used as well. He took out the trash without her having to ask. He picked up his things from the sofa, the newspapers, the laptop, the socks that he usually left lying around. He folded the blanket he used on cold nights. He arranged the pillows. He left the house feeling light, like never before. On the third day, he pinned a note on the refrigerator. "You're going to shine today. Good job, Ava." Below it, a poorly drawn heart. He knew she had an important presentation at the architecture office where she worked. Before, he rarely remembered these details. Now, he made a point of it. Flowers came next. Not an elaborate bouquet, just simple flowers bought from the corner shop. White lilies, her favourites. Left on the counter, unsigned, but with a small card that read, "To brighten your day." When Ava came home from work and saw them, she looked up, puzzled. Eli just smiled, as if it were normal, as if he hadn't spent years ignoring these little gestures. One day, when she rushed out to work, forgetting to prepare lunch as she always did, she found a small sandwich in her bag, and a new note. "In case you don't have time to eat, take care of yourself." She began to react, first with surprise, then with curiosity, and finally with frustration. One night while Eli was washing the dishes, something he rarely did before, Ava leaned against the kitchen door frame, crossed her arms, and asked directly, "What are you doing, Eli?" He paused for a moment, his hands covered in suds. "Washing the dishes." "You know what I mean," she insisted, her voice firm but controlled. "All these attentions, the coffee, the flowers, the notes. What is this?" Eli slowly dried his hands on the dish towel hanging next to the sink. "I'm trying to be the husband you deserve to have. Now." Ava let out a bitter laugh. "When I've already signed the divorce papers? When I already have an apartment to move into next week?" She thought he was trying to delay the inevitable, to manipulate her into reconsidering. She started pushing more for him to sign the papers, so they could formalize the end quickly. Eli lied. He said he would send them to another lawyer, that he wanted to make sure everything was in order with the division of assets, that he needed a few more days. It was just an excuse to buy time, to show her that he was still there, or rather that he finally was. Ava remembered with regret the beginning of the marriage. Eli was kind, attentive, even creative. In the first few months, he would leave little surprises for her, a favourite chocolate on the bedside table, a movie she wanted to see downloaded on the laptop, a bath prepared after a difficult day. But over the years he had plunged into unbearable apathy. He wouldn't listen when she spoke. He didn't help with household chores. And when she complained, he would respond with irritation or silence. That man was lost, or perhaps revealed. Now suddenly, he seemed resurrected. But it was too late. At least Ava thought so. Still, Eli persisted. He would bring coffee to the bedroom on weekends, fold her clothes when he saw the basket full, stop by the pharmacy to buy the supplements she took, prepare dinner on days he knew she would come home late from the office, and most importantly, he didn't demand anything in return. No demands, no pleas, just silent gestures like apologies he couldn't verbalize. However, reality arrived mercilessly. The lawyer called. Deadlines were expiring. He needed to sign. And finally Eli signed, with a trembling hand and a heavy heart. That night, Ava stood at the bedroom door with watery eyes. It was the eve of her move to the new apartment. Eli noticed, but said nothing. She also remained silent, simply observing him as if trying to memorize that moment. Then, she returned to her room and finished packing her bags. The next morning she loaded the last boxes into the car. Eli helped, carrying the heavier items. When everything was ready, they stood on the sidewalk facing each other. There was nothing more to say. "Thank you for the help," she murmured, the house keys nervously spinning between her fingers. "Whenever you need," he replied, knowing she probably wouldn't need it anymore. Ava got into the car, started the engine, and drove off. He stayed behind. In the following days, Eli sank into a strange emptiness. The silence of the house was now complete. And more cruel. He walked through the rooms and felt like a visitor to himself, a stranger amid his own possessions. At night, lying in the bed that now seemed too big, he went over every moment of his 2 marriages. The patterns were clear, repetitive. In the beginning, he was present, attentive, devoted. But then, slowly, without realizing it, he began to drift away, to take love for granted, to stop noticing the little things that kept the connection alive, tried to keep the mind busy, started jogging in the park near home every morning, enrolled in a sports centre for swimming lessons, renovated the backyard garden, which had been neglected for years, read books that had been on the waiting list for months, watched documentaries, had to keep moving, or would sink. One afternoon, while tidying up the hallway closet, found a box of mementos Ava had left behind. Inside, there were photographs, movie tickets, small travel souvenirs, a small diary. Hesitated, but eventually opened it. On the first page, Ava had written, "Things I love about Eli." The list was long, detailed, surprising. She noticed things about him that even he hadn't realized. The way he furrowed his brow when he was focused. How he always double-checked if the door was locked. The way he remembered small details from movies. How he sang in the shower thinking no one could hear. Turned the page. Happy moments with Eli. Another extensive list. Small moments, big events, all described with a tenderness that made him sit on the floor, overwhelmed with emotion. The last entry was from 8 months ago. The journal ended abruptly, without explanation. But Eli knew why. 8 months ago was when things really started to fall apart, when the arguments became more frequent, when silence began to engulf the house. But in every corner of the house there were still traces of her. The blue mug with stars that she couldn't bear to take, the scarf forgotten in the bathroom cabinet, the book open on page 86, with the bookmark still in place. He respected every detail as someone who walks through a sanctuary. A week passed. Then 2. Eli established new routines, trying to find a rhythm for his solitary life. He learned to cook more elaborate dishes, following recipes online. He bought plants for the house, taking care of them with a dedication he had never had before. One afternoon, while watering the new ferns on the porch, his phone rang. It was Ava. She needed some documents she had forgotten. She asked if she could come by the next day to pick them up. Eli agreed, trying to keep his voice neutral despite his racing heart. He spent the entire night organizing the documents, meticulously sorting everything into folders. In the morning, he cleaned the entire house, even though it was spotless. He prepared fresh coffee in case she wanted some. He cut some flowers from the garden and placed them in a small vase on the coffee table. On Friday, at the end of the afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Ava. She had her hair down, shorter than he remembered. Perhaps a new haircut. She wore a simple dark blue dress and a light jacket. Her eyes were steady, determined, but there was something new there. A calm vulnerability, as if she was also processing the changes in her life. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi," he replied, opening the door wider. "Come in." Ava entered slowly, observing the house with curious eyes. She noticed the new plants, the books organized differently, the aroma of fresh coffee. Small changes that spoke of new routines, of a life moving forward. She sat on the couch without needing an invitation. Eli sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance, unsure if he should say something or wait for her to speak. Time passed slowly, measured only by the ticking of the clock on the kitchen wall. Finally, she took a small box out of her bag. He recognized it immediately. It was the box where they kept their rings. Inside, his ring. "I kept it," she said in a low voice, "because I still didn't know what to do with it." Eli looked at the ring, then at Ava. Her face was a mixture of emotions, fear, hope, doubt, determination. "I've been thinking a lot," she continued, choosing her words carefully. "About us. About what happened. About how we got here." Eli waited, giving her the time she needed. "When I moved, I thought it would be a relief, a new beginning, and in many ways it is, but also—" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's also lonely and confusing." "I know," he murmured. "Believe me, I know." She looked around the room, noticing the small details, the subtle changes. "You seem different," she observed. "I'm trying to be," he admitted. "Not for you or not just for you, for myself, to not make the same mistakes again." There were no grand promises, just presence, honesty. She looked at him and said she wanted to try, not to resume what they had, but to start from scratch, like two people who knew each other deeply but were willing to rediscover one another. And for the first time, he understood the difference. It was not about fixing the past, but about starting over with what they had learned. And he had learned. Harshly, belatedly, but he had learned. That love is a daily effort, that small gestures matter as much as grand declarations, that being present, truly present, is the greatest gift one can offer someone. "We can start slow," she suggested. "A coffee, a conversation, see where it takes us." Eli felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a chance, a possibility he no longer believed he had. "I would like that," he replied, with a genuine smile. But that night, as the day bid farewell in orange hues on the horizon, Eli looked at his empty hands, his and Ava's, and saw not an absence, but an open space, an invitation to build something new, something different, something better. She nodded, as if reading his thoughts. Sometimes we demand changes in others, without realizing that the first ones need to come from us. And sometimes when we finally change, we discover that it's not too late for a new beginning. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.